AZCentral running a story headline: an Arizona woman's landlord accused her of a crime. It cost her family their home. It goes into what is common practice, and it's called a Crime Free Lease Addendum. If you are a renter, there's a good chance you've got a Crime Free Lease Addendum. I didn't even know if I did, and I pulled up my lease, and sure enough, I do. So we're using it for show material today. Joining us right now is our legal expert, the great Barry Markson, KTAR legal analyst, joins us right now. So Barry, according to what I'm seeing, the Crime Free Lease Addendum seems to be very well tilted in the favor of the landlords and seems to restrict an awful lot of the rights and basic processes that the tenant might have should they be accused of doing something untoward. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it is, Chris. I think that's exactly right. It's definitely written with an eye toward the landlord. It's set up in a way that it gives the landlord an easier access to an eviction. I get the basis behind it. The idea was, let's find ways to take criminals or people who are committing criminal acts out of residential housing and make it easier for the landlords to evict them rather than have to keep them around and jump through a lot of hoops. You can say, okay, I get that, and that's something we should all be a part of. But here, there's no due process. There's no finding of a crime. There's no allegations. Not even a charge by the police officers, or sometimes not even a call to the police. It's just the landlord says this looks like criminal activity, and we're going to evict you because we don't want to deal with it anymore.
So, are there any limitations to this? It feels very wide open all of a sudden. Like they can just make up anything they want.
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess you can't make anything up, but you have to, if you can show evidence of it. I mean, in any eviction, you're going to go in front of a judge, so you have the opportunity to plead your case at some point. But for most renters, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how it works. They're not going to hire counsel. The landlords already have a big advantage in any sort of an eviction proceeding. And now the way this addendum is written to the contracts, it gives them almost unfettered power to evict somebody if the landlord can just allege a crime and have some basis for it.
Barry Markson's our KTAR legal analyst. Barry, if your property management team independently decides that you've committed a crime or might have committed something that could be a crime, or they just decide they want you out and they're evicting you in 24 hours, what recourse do you have if you're leasing an apartment somewhere?
Yeah, you'd have to. You're right, Joe. It's tough. You'd have to get. I hate to say you have to get a lawyer, but I don't know how you'd be able to do this without it. But you'd have to get a lawyer. You could file something for some sort of a preliminary injunction or a restraining order with the court and ask them to stop. You have to try to get in front of a judge as quickly as you can. But it's to have an eviction with 24-hour notice is kind of unheard of. I mean, that's just not how it works. And without having that avenue of, let me show this to somebody to see if they think I should be evicted, it makes it very difficult. So I'll be frank with you, I was unaware of this. This isn't the kind of law I practice, but this is a really, in my mind, a very large overreach here, and definitely puts tenants at risk if the landlord just wants to get rid of you.
Barry Markson's our KTAR legal analyst as we talk about the crime-free lease addendum that the investigators at Arizona Republic have been looking into, which I think is really interesting, and then who it applies to and how it's being applied. Are there any civil protections that I can't sign away? I mean, even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be allowed to sign away certain inalienable rights, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, there's still constitutional protections. I don't know that you can necessarily sign away your right to equal protection under the law and the Fifth, your different constitutional rights as far as saying things, your Fifth Amendment rights, things like that. But yeah, in a private setting, that's what's important to notice here. This isn't the government coming after these people. It's a private contract. So in a private setting, you can really kind of contract. You can contract for almost anything. And here, you don't. Nobody's forcing you to sign that lease. So you don't have to sign a lease with an apartment building or somebody else who's doing that. But if you do, it's going to put you in kind of a bad spot with your landlord. That's the problem with the contract is they're going to argue you don't have to sign it. If you don't want to sign it, that's okay. But if you sign it, now you're under our rules.
What options does anyone have if all the major landlords are adding the same addendum? And we know that there's already a massive lawsuit going on. For those unfamiliar, there's a massive lawsuit going on that a number of large leasing companies were colluding to fix prices, including some in the Valley as well. So, I mean, basically, it's not collusion necessarily that they all have this Crime Free Lease Addendum, but they all have it. So while I don't need to sign it, what are my alternatives? And if there are no alternatives, is that really an option?
Yeah, you're right, and that's the issue. And what'll happen is whether or not they're colluding. Most apartment complex owners, most landlords, they use similar law firms and similar lawyers, and they're being told, "Hey, you can add this," and it gives you a lot of flexibility. Look, if I own an apartment complex, I'd love to have an addendum like this in the lease. It gives me the opportunity to rid my complex of people who I think are potentially going to commit crimes or criminals or making the place less livable or less attractive to the other tenants. So it provides you with more assistance in that respect. The other option would be to rent a house. Individual homes are unlikely to have this in it necessarily, or find a smaller apartment complex. But yeah, it's very limiting. Chris, there's no question. It's going to be there in most places. And, I think you're right. You pointed out the collusion that occurs. I know the Attorney General's office, Chris Mays, brought that suit against a whole bunch of the large apartment complex owners in the Valley about their collusion as to rent. So to say that they don't know that they're all going to put it in the lease, I think you're right. It's going to be in everybody's lease. Talking
with Barry Markson, our KTAR legal analyst, about an AZCentral investigation. An Arizona woman's landlord accused her of a crime, ended up costing her family their home. And she wasn't the only one. These crime-free lease addendums have been on the books since the 1990s.
But the crime, by the way, was yelling at somebody else's kid for hitting her kid with a football.
Correct.
Not
Cops
an actual
didn't show up.
Not an actual crime. Mm-hmm. Right.
Didn't grab the kid. There was no assault.
Right.
It was
right.
Yeah, and frankly, had asked them to stop throwing the ball around her daughter. I mean, she handled it appropriately until she kind of snapped. But even with that, I failed to see what the crime was. So, but yes, that's the case that's in front of us now.
Barry, how do these play out? What happens if? I mean, you mentioned it, 24 hours to move. That's incredibly extreme, in my opinion. What if I decide, hey, I'm not moving. I'm not gonna leave. I'm staying in my place. What then?
You'll usually get the sheriff will come and they try to be as nice as they can to these folks. I mean, whenever there's an eviction, it's always folks who are not in a great place. And in my experience, that people are generally trying to work with you as best they can, but you got to get out. So you're either going to pack your stuff and move, or they're going to do it for you. But they're
going to put my stuff in a U-Haul, or they're going to what? Set it on the street corner?
Yeah, they'll put it on the sidewalk and just get it out of there. So it's an almost impossible situation. And for a lot of people, for most people, I think, we're living paycheck to paycheck. It's not a situation where people just have the money sitting around to go put a deposit down on another apartment on 24 hours notice and have another place to go and have a month's rent ready to go. And it's a very, very difficult situation. So it's unfortunate when you see if you see it abused. This is a lot of power placed into landlords' hands, and if they abuse it, I think we would all agree if somebody's renting an apartment and they fire a gun in the apartment complex or commit an actual crime or a violent crime, I think most of us would say we want that person out of our apartment complex. But when it's used in something like this, where somebody just got upset and yelled, or even if people were just partying too much or saying something too loudly or making a disturbance, is that something that should get you evicted? And should it get you evicted at all? But should it have it where you're forced to be evicted in 24 hours? That's incredibly harsh and very onerous, I think, for almost everybody.
Agreed.
Barry Markson, our KTAR legal analyst, talking with us about the crime-free lease addendum. Thank you so much, Barry.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, always appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.